Hey, this is Shaun with the Atlanta Tennis Podcast, powered by Go Tennis. Check out our calendar of Metro Atlanta tennis events at letsgotennis.com. And this year, I was just going to say this month, but this year we are looking for your story. We want to hear those crazy things that happen on the tennis courts. We want to hear the exciting wins. If you've got a great tennis story, we want to hear it. Please go to letsgotennis.com/my story, where you can enter that. You'll be entered into our giveaways monthly and at the end of the year. This is Tennis Fitness with Nathan Martin. Nathan and his wife have been at the forefront of tennis fitness innovation for the past 20 years. They have worked with some household names like Leighton Hewitt, Sam Stosur, and Martina Navratilova. I just picked a couple of Aussies and threw them in, 2 out of 3. I figured that would work well for us. But today, Nathan, we're talking about tennis fitness for those of us who are over 40 years old. So now, Nathan, my first question, is 40 an arbitrary number? It's just like, we'll draw the line around 40.
Yeah.
Or do things actually start to physically change at that age? Let's start there.
Good question. Look, all of us are wired a little bit differently, I guess, with our genetic profiles, but typically over 40, well, things are changing. The moment we're born, we're pretty much dying, right? So it's like you pull an apple from the tree, it's alive, and the moment you pull it off, it's not alive anymore. So,
or the flowers I get my wife for Valentine's Day, right?
That's correct, Shaun. So yeah, look, we're constantly on this, this journey of physical evolution as our bodies grow and change, and it's always happening every day. But there's certain, I guess we call them milestones that we hit as we age. But typically over the age of 25, the body starts to, we sort of hit our physical peak from a growth perspective. So we can still get gains in lots of areas, and we can continue to do that if we're doing the right things. But really that around that 25 age bracket is when things start to change. And then from 25 to 40, people generally can sort of have a good period of maintaining, strength and conditioning, doing pretty much being able to maintain what they could do when they're 25 all the way through to 40 if they're doing the right things and looking after themselves. Once we get to 40, though, hormonally, a lot of things start to change. We're releasing less hormone, which means, our body also internally, like even from an organs perspective, things just start to slow down. So what does that mean? Well, it means that our bodies don't recover as well. It doesn't mean that it means that we can't perform at a higher level as we were when, say, we were 25. So we're sort of fighting against what our body's wanting to do. So the mind might be still like, hey, I want to go and do these things. And this is where people come unstuck. If you're quite a driven person, you've been a high-end athlete for a long period of time, people can start to notice they get to that 40 age group and above, and they start getting more injuries. They start having less energy. They start to get a lot tighter. And they're battling against that because the mind's there. And I went through this myself. The mind's there and the mind's pushing, but the body then ends up people feel like it lets them down.
I like I'm going to call it maintaining the peak. So if you can take that, like Roger Federer, we're going to even say, is Djokovic going to be able to pull that off and say, okay, if my peak is 25, which is interesting because the male brain isn't even fully cooked at that point. So I'm physically capable of doing things, but I'm still kind of an idiot. I don't know if
a lot of us ever get there.
Well, that's true. As you said, we're all genetically slightly different, right? But in this case, we try to maintain that peak into 40. And everybody told me a couple of things. Oh, Shaun, your eyesight will start getting you at 40. Well, it wasn't. It was 42 for me, where all of a sudden it was the dusk time frame. It was hard to see, and the lights were a little tougher. So some of those things started to change. I can still read without the readers, so that's good. A few years after 40. So some things, like you say, they were a little bit different here and there, but 40 seems to be that magic number of saying, okay, now you've got to pay attention. What do we get into next? What are the main things when I look at what you offer to players specifically? And if I'm at home trying to get this 46-year-old body to do what it used to do, what are the main things I need to be focused on? Because I'm guessing going and running 20 miles isn't a great idea.
Yeah, that's correct. So it depends what I call it, what kind of a platform you're coming into that age bracket in. If you've maintained quite well, if we look, I'll give you a little bit of an analogy. So if you imagine if you buy a car and the car's very well maintained, it's garage, it's serviced regularly, it's polished internally, it's just really well looked after, and it's driven, it's used for what it's meant to be used for, but it's really well looked after. If you have that car for 10, 20 years, the car's still going to be in good condition as it gets older. But if you leave the car outside, you don't look after it, you don't rush treat it, you don't get it serviced regularly, when those two cars come to the same age, one still will be able to perform at a decent level. One car is going to start to have a lot more problems. So the platform's very important that people come in to. And if the platform isn't great, can you reverse it? Well, you can to a degree. So you can work on your flexibility and all those sorts of areas. But the key areas to really focus on in that age group would be your mobility. So the difference between mobility and flexibility, Shaun, is mobility is more like looking at range of movement. So multiple joints. So like doing a squat, for example, where we're using the ankle joint, we're using the knee joint, we're using the back joint. All those joints are moving slightly through that movement. So that's what we call a mobility exercise. So the benefit of doing more mobility over flexibility is more, when we talk about that, it's more like thinking about elongating a specific muscle, which will help. And don't get me wrong, it definitely should be done. But mobility is really important because it's what we want to get good articulation through our spine, for example. So like through rotation, getting the arms up and twisting at the same time. That's really where, as we age, we start to lose mobility, and then we lose functionality. And then what happens is certain parts of your body then get overused, because instead of your body, for example, being able to do this, instead now it just does this. So these muscles and the joint that's specifically working through there gets overloaded. So mobility is very important to do, and also strength. Strength training should be done by everyone a couple of times a week, once a week minimum, particularly in that age group. We lose about 3% of our strength every decade. So we lose muscle mass, we lose strength, and that's over the age of 25. So by the time you hit 40, that's a decade and a half, you've lost roughly around 5-6% of your strength and your muscle mass. So it's important to keep trying to work on that and maintain that as much as you can. And then the last area, and this is where a lot of people come unstuck, we've got to keep the body moving. So if you love playing tennis, you've got to be doing some specific sort of off-court training for that. So speed and agility training, getting yourself around some cones. And the reason is because a lot of players, particularly males, they'll tear their calf muscles, hamstrings, playing tennis, because it's a dynamic sport, right? So if you think about this, the body's mobile, the body's strong, and the body's used to moving at a high intensity away from specifically playing tennis. So where you're not focusing on the ball, you're focusing purely on the movement. We call that like more controlled. So the movement's more controlled, so we can hone in and think, where's my body? Where are my feet? How's this feeling? Am I doing it right? Then that all transfers over onto the court, and it's how we help ourselves age well as an athlete.
So you made a distinction between mobility and flexibility. What's the distinction between mobility and movement?
So nothing. Mobility is movement.
Okay.
Yep.
So mobility is a range of motion?
That's correct. That's
and
correct.
movement might be me and the ladder?
Yeah, so movement would be, well, look, when you're doing mobility exercises, you're moving your body. Okay, but I wouldn't consider like sprinting a mobility exercise. So mobility exercises are more specific to, like, say if I wanted to work on a classic example for aging tennis players is our thoracic rotation. So our mid-back, the mid part of our back, getting our bodies mobile through that rotation to load up, it's like, winding up a spring, right, and releasing it. So if we coil and then we come out of that rotation and we've got good mobility through that thoracic chain, it takes a lot of pressure off the shoulder sling, because we start to generate power through the rotation, and then the arm just follows through with the movement. So we're working on that thoracic rotation in a specific mobility with a specific mobility exercise.
Okay, so if If flexibility is my yoga, mobility would be my Pilates.
Yeah, generally we do mobility exercises would be like standalone. So I generally get people to do those in the morning, or before they hit. So we just think of dynamic stretching.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's kind of what I
That's
pictured. That's why I picture
so
Pilates as kind of that movement version of yoga with the
I'd probably
bands, and
say
I can do a little more.
it's more like flow yoga. If you've ever done flow yoga where you don't sort of stop and hold a
Yeah,
position, you're just
sure.
constantly moving into end range, you come back out of end range, you go into end range, you come back out of end range. It's like more of a
Gotcha.
flow state.
Okay, and about the strength, am I still? I'm in my 40s. Am I going to the gym? Am I doing more mat work, more body weight? What am I doing from a strength point of view?
Whatever you feel comfortable doing. Like if I had to give you everybody some clear cut advice and generalize, I'd say get yourself to the gym. Definitely get yourself to the gym, but there's a platform that we want to work into. And if you haven't got a background in the gym, you need to start off doing more body weight, resistance bands, and then you want to phase into more lifting with what we call load, so lifting weights.
And in that case, we're men, so we get in there and we just start doing the curls,
Yeah.
right? Because we figure this
Yeah.
is what we need to do, but that's probably not the place to start. Core is what
No,
everybody says, or where do you say I start in the gym?
look, it's not going to hurt you. It's going to help to some degree, no matter what you do in there. But yeah, there's like if we're talking sort of purely and specifically about tennis, there's a way we want to do things. So load with body weight, using bands, add some rotation in. Obviously, a lot of lower body work. A lot of guys just like, lifting what looks good, which is, chest and arms. It's what they can see. But yeah, we want to sort of work in a little bit more specific space for tennis. And look, to be honest with you, it doesn't have to be very complicated. I've obviously worked with a lot of high-end players, and we keep it basic. We look at a couple of different load movement patterns. So we look at like a squat pattern, a lunge pattern, and we look at like a hinge or a bend pattern. So like something like a deadlift. Okay, then we look at rotation. Then we look at a push. So like a chest press or something using a cable. We look at a pull. And then we look at an overhead press for the shoulders. So we sort of incorporate, if you look at working in all of those areas, which is how we sort of set a lot of our programming up. It's working through those movements and then periodizing so that they get more specific for tennis as you get closer to the sort of the back end of programming.
Gotcha. And aside from the fact that 40 and 50 somethings usually have more money than 20 somethings, when I get to the gym, I see the people with the fitness trainers in the gym. And it's not the guys like I was when I was 25. I'm like, I don't need a trainer. I got this. I can do whatever I want because I'm less likely to get myself hurt. Do you suggest if those that aren't in your area, especially we talk mostly Atlanta here, somebody going in and get some advice, get some help while you're in there?
Yeah, definitely, especially to get going, get the confidence up. But if you're someone that's familiar with the gym, look, we talk about training age or training experience when we look at programming for athletes. So say yourself, Shaun, say if you've been, an avid gym goer for 20 years, so I know that you could jump on one of my programs online and you'd follow it easily. It's got all your instructions in there. You know how things work. You know how to work your way around a gym. But if you turned up and said, hey, Nathan, I want you to put a program together for me. I've never done strength in my life. I would say, hey, here's the program, but I think you need to probably get a few sessions with a trainer just to get you going with it, to get you comfortable, just to tweak the technique, because I haven't got my eyes on the sky with you. So that's generally what I recommend.
Yeah, and in that case, it's just making sure you get it right because the other scenario, when we look at the over 40 point of view, with you mentioned the strength, the movement, and the mobility, is just injury prevention. And that's kind of where I would say is got to be that it's got to be that constant background process for all of us after a certain age where we say, okay, I can do as much as I can or as much as I want at some point as much as I have time to because we're busy. But I've just got to prevent injury. And it doesn't mean I have to work out in ways that I'm saying, okay, I'm doing my injury prevention workout. But
Yeah.
even during my workouts, I've just got to have injury prevention in the back of my mind, do I not?
Like you brought up a really good point. I can't remember exactly what you said, but it was something like, the injury prevention process you go through subconsciously. Really, that's what we're all training for. Like we think we're training for performance, but before performance comes, we've got to be able to perform. So we've got to be able to do you can't walk on a tennis court if you've got a torn hamstring. So, but you're right, people don't say, hey, I don't want to tear a hamstring, because they're not walking around thinking they're going to tear a hamstring. It's not until they have a reoccurring injury that people go, hey, this is at the forefront of my mind now. But indirectly it is. So you get me, right? You mentioned that, and that really makes sense. So you're right. Yeah, look, definitely hitting those markers of keeping yourself strong, keeping yourself mobile, and preventing injury is really our step one. If we're not doing that, and you're someone that keeps getting reoccurring shoulder injuries, calf injuries, is very typical for players in this age bracket, those two injuries. You got to do something about it. We don't change what we're doing, we're not going to change the result. So you've got to follow some kind of a programming, get yourself in front of someone who knows what they're doing, and get, just look at making changes. I do some work with a lot of players, and quite a few of them now are in that older age group. It's amazing that some of them will say, oh, look, Nathan, I just turned 50. I've just retired, and I just want to spend some time just doing what I want to do now. And I've always wanted to get really fit for tennis. So I set up, giving them some guidance, set them up with some things. And when they're diligent as well, or I've never felt this good on the tennis court. And it's just because they hadn't been doing the right things for a long period of time, because they mightn't have had the time, they mightn't have had the resources. But no matter your age, you can definitely make big shifts. And if you haven't done much before that's specific, I guarantee you, once you do some work that is age specific and tennis specific, you'll blow yourself away how well you can feel.
Yeah, and I think the injury prevention is the thing that permeates for me, because yeah, I can work on my speed and my power and my core, and it's going to make me a better tennis player, but I don't get to play tennis if I blow the calf. And that seems to be a common thing now that's happening with the guys over 40. The males specifically is more about what I know about, because it's my world on the tennis court. But that is also just about living longer. It's about being around to see your grandkids, because I found out that when I hurt my knee and I had to have meniscus surgery, I immediately got 20 pounds. It came, it was free. I didn't have to pay for it or anything. And 20 pounds just plopped right on me. And it's the kind of thing now that it's not just the injury. Now it's the weight you got to get down and you got to get back in, and it's even harder. And so in that case, if I can remove the potential for injury, or at least lessen it, then I don't put on the weight, then I don't have the same health issues as I get older. This is way beyond tennis. So I assume that's where we can say, tennis is like life in quite a few ways. But in this case, to wrap up the concept, which is, yes, I want to be a better tennis player. Yes, I want to be fitter. Sometimes I'll play tennis to get fit, like I try to do. Other people, like you said, they're getting fit to play tennis. And I really like that target too. But really, it's what's more important in my mind.
That's the goal.
Yeah. And what's more important in my mind is now looking after my kids and realizing I want to be around, because I'm relatively recently married, and I want to be around longer, because now I have other things that matter. It isn't just I want to be playing tennis when I'm 90. So it's the length of time I can be around on earth. And I can be mobile and I can do my yoga, but can I actually keep this body working as well as possible, as long as possible? So what's of the things we've talked about today, paramount, if you were going to give me one thing, is it the mobility? Is it the strength? That a lot of people say, you see the old people out there just going for a walk. It's like, just keep moving, right? My wife says movement is life. Is there one thing that you'd say over 40? Hey, you know what? You're going to get fit. You're going to play tennis. I get all that, but really focus here on this one thing.
Strength.
Really?
Strength is king. Strength is king. Yep.
Okay.
You look at all the data, you speak to anybody in the industry. Yeah, strength training. And however you do that, if it's via Pilates, if it's via going to the gym, if it's by doing resistance bands, you know, we sort of covered the best way that I feel to do it, then yeah, 100% it's going to help you live longer, live better. It's going to prevent falls. It's going to prevent injuries. Yep.
Well, I'll admit,
Your
I didn't
body's
see that coming,
strong.
but since you put it that way.
Yeah, your body's strong, your body's robust. You know, if your body's not strong, but your body's very mobile, you still can have problems. Strength it's the foundation for everything else.
Strength it is. I'll take it. Nathan Martin, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. We will follow again next month. What is this, episode 3? So we're gonna do a few of these, but I appreciate it. And in this case, it's for me specifically as well. Being over 40, now I know I got to get myself back in the gym, work on that strength, do my Pilates. My wife will be happy about that. Nathan, thanks so much. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, no worries, Shaun. See you guys.